Monday morning, a 15-person marketing agency. Someone opens what looks like an invoice from a vendor they actually work with. The logo is right, the tone is right, even the invoice number looks plausible. It's a PDF. Nothing happens when it opens. No warning, no pop-up, nothing that looks wrong. By 11 a.m., someone tries to open a client presentation from the shared drive and gets an error. Then another file. Then someone notices every file name in the project folder now ends in a string of random characters. Then the screen starts showing the same message, one by one, like lights going out across the office. Your files have been encrypted. The office manager's first move is to unplug the main server, which is actually not a bad instinct. Her second move is to call the guy who fixes their printers and set up their Wi-Fi, because he's the computer person. He is not a security person. He has never handled this before. Nobody in the building knows what to do next, and in the confusion, two different employees start clicking through folders trying to see how bad it is, which is exactly the kind of activity that makes a bad day worse, because they have no idea if they're looking at a contained infection or one that's still actively spreading through whatever they touch next. Nothing about this required a sophisticated attacker. It required one email, one click, and a business with no plan for what happens in the next 60 minutes. That gap, not the malware itself, is what turns a bad morning into a bad year. Here's what almost nobody outside security understands about ransomware: the encryption isn't the attack. It's the last step of an attack that's often been running quietly for days, sometimes weeks, before a single file gets locked. Modern ransomware groups don't just infect one computer and encrypt it on the spot. After that first click, the attacker typically has a foothold, and they spend time exploring. Which computer did they land on? What's it connected to? Is there a shared drive? A domain controller? Backup software? They're looking for the path that lets them hit as much as possible at once, because a bigger blast radius means more leverage when they ask for money. Only once they've mapped out the network, and often after they've already quietly copied out sensitive files, so they have a second threat besides encryption, do they trigger the actual encryption, usually timed for a moment with the least supervision. Late at night. A Friday. A holiday weekend. This is why the first hour after you discover encrypted files is not the beginning of the attack, it's usually the end of the reconnaissance phase and the start of the damage phase. And it's also why what you do in that first hour matters enormously. If the attacker is still active on your network when you find the first encrypted file, unplugging the wrong thing, or leaving the wrong thing plugged in, decides whether this stops at one folder or spreads through everything connected to it, including, if you're not careful, your backups. The numbers here are worth sitting with, because they explain why ransomware isn't really a technology problem for most small businesses, it's a survival problem. Recovery from a ransomware incident is measured in weeks, not hours or days, even for businesses that do everything right. Rebuilding systems, verifying backups are clean, working with investigators, and getting back to normal operations routinely stretches into the better part of a month, and every one of those weeks is a week without full access to the files and systems the business runs on. Paying the ransom does not reliably solve the problem either. A meaningful share of businesses that pay still don't get all their data back. Decryption tools provided by attackers are sometimes incomplete, sometimes broken, and sometimes files are corrupted beyond what any key can fix. And paying doesn't undo the second threat. If the attacker also copied your files out before encrypting them, paying for a decryption key does nothing to stop that data from being sold or leaked later. You can pay and still get both outcomes. And the business impact compounds from there. Clients notice when you go dark for weeks. Vendors notice when invoices don't get paid on time because your accounting system is encrypted. For a small business already running on thin margins, the incident itself is often survivable. It's the combination of downtime, recovery cost, and reputational damage that isn't. So what actually matters in the first hour? Not the things most people assume. First, isolate, don't power off. Disconnect the infected machine from the network, pull the Ethernet cable, turn off Wi-Fi, but don't shut it down. Turning a machine off can destroy evidence in memory that investigators need to understand what happened and whether it's safe to restore. Isolating stops the spread without destroying the trail. Second, don't touch the backups yet. The instinct is to immediately restore from backup to get back to work. Resist it. If the attacker is still on the network, or if the infection reached the backup system before you isolated it, restoring now can reinfect everything you just fixed. Backups get restored after the environment is confirmed clean, not before. Third, know who you're calling, in order, before you need the list. Not the computer guy who fixes printers. The order that actually works, your cyber insurance provider first. If you have a policy, they often dictate which incident response firm you're allowed to use and will cover the cost. Then a real incident response firm. Law enforcement reporting happens too, but it's not going to stop your files from being encrypted right now. It matters for accountability and, sometimes, decryption keys becoming available later. Fourth, don't decide about paying in the first hour. It's a business decision that needs legal input, insurance input, and a clear picture of what's actually been hit, not a panic decision made by whoever's in the room when the ransom note appears on screen. Here's where this goes wrong in real businesses, for mistakes, all preventable, all common. 1. Restoring too fast. Getting back to work is the instinct, and it's exactly backwards here. Restore before confirming the environment is clean, and there's a real chance of wiring the infection right back into place. 2. Paying without a plan. No verification that the decryption key even works before sending payment. No legal review of what paying might mean for regulatory reporting obligations. Just make it stop, send the money. 3. No incident response contacts on file. Discovering, in the middle of the incident, that nobody knows their cyber insurance policy number, or which firm to call, or who has the authority to approve emergency spending. Every one of those lookups costs time the business doesn't have. 4. Or the backup that wasn't actually isolated. This is the gut punch. A business believes its backups are safe because they're in the cloud or on a separate drive, but the backup system was still network connected and got encrypted right along with everything else, because nobody had verified the isolation actually held. The backup existed. It just wasn't protected from the same attack it was supposed to be the answer to. Notice the pattern. Every one of these is a process failure, not a technology failure. The systems didn't need to be different. The plan needed to exist before the Monday it was needed. The fix here costs almost nothing and takes an afternoon, which is the good news, because most small businesses assume incident response planning requires a security team they can't afford. Build a one-page incident response plan before you need it. Who gets called, in what order, with phone numbers that don't live only in one person's phone. What isolate means in practice for your specific setup, which cables to pull, which systems to disconnect. Who has authority to approve emergency spending on incident response without waiting for a meeting that can't happen for 2 days? Get cyber insurance with incident response included, not just a payout after the fact. The value isn't only the money, it's that a good policy gives you an incident response firm on speed dial, vetted in advance, instead of Googling "help my company got ransomware" while the clock is running. Test your backup isolation for real, not on paper. Confirm the backup system genuinely can't be reached from the rest of the network by anything that gets compromised elsewhere. The 3 copies, 1 off-site principle from earlier in this series exists specifically for this scenario. And run a table-type exercise once a year, 30 minutes, where the team walks through what would we actually do before it's real. The businesses that recover fastest aren't the ones with the most expensive security tools. They're the ones where nobody has to figure out the plan while they're also living through the incident. Here's a 5-minute test you can run today, with whoever would be in the room if this happened to you. Ask directly, if we found encrypted files on the shared drive right now, who picks up the phone first, and do we have their number somewhere other than one person's contacts app? If the honest answer is you would figure it out, that's the gap this video is about. Then ask 3 more questions, and write down the answers. 1. Do we have cyber insurance, and does it include incident response, not just a payout? 2. Has anyone actually verified our backups are isolated from the rest of the network, tested, not assumed? 3. Does one person have clear authority to approve emergency spending in the first hour, without waiting on a meeting? If any answer is vague, that's the honest answer, no. This isn't about buying new technology. It's about writing down a plan that already fits the systems you have before the Monday morning you need it. If you found this useful, the earlier video on backups covers the 3 copies rule. This plan depends on link on screen. Subscribe, and I'll see you next week.